All right, all
Go live
right.
with Jomar J. Oh, we're we're a little delayed. We're not quite synced up, and we're rolling.
Are we synced up now?
Yeah, more
I
or
think we
less.
are. Look at that. We weren't synced up. Now we're synced up.
It's like life. You're not synced up, then you're synced up, then you're not synced up, then you're
Right,
synced up.
right. I don't know which screen to look at. It's like, do I look at the Instagram screen or do I look at the
Or you could be more
the
savvy like
StreamYard
me, and I
screen?
put my phone on my computer, so as long as I'm looking straight ahead, you would know that I am looking. You wouldn't know if I'm. You know what I mean? Like,
I
anyways,
do, I do.
yeah.
Except mine's not as positioned that way.
Yeah, well,
So,
maybe you should reposition yourself.
are you trying to coach me? I don't know that you asked permission to coach me.
That was not coaching. That was telling you what to do.
That was just telling me what to do.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
interesting.
straight up dictatorship.
Well, I appreciate your awareness, and I don't appreciate you telling me what to do.
Okay, no problem. But it's funny because now even when I'm looking at you, I'm looking at you on the StreamYard, and it's like you're looking at me, but on the Instagram, you're not looking at me. Anyways,
Geez.
hi folks, welcome back to the
Hello,
Well for
folks.
2021.
All right, that's us. I'm Jomar. I'm a transformative and executive coach. I work with founders, business owners, creatives, athletes, high performers, really, who need some support to sustain whatever it is that they're up to. This is the Well, and we provide these wisdom bits every Wednesday at 1 p.m. and sometimes have some fun, poking at each other a little bit. And you are and
Hi guys,
introduce yourself.
my name's Emily. If you don't know me already, if you're here, you probably know who I am. But if you don't, that's fine. I'm friends and colleagues of Jomar's. We're both coaches, as he mentioned. Lately, I've been dubbing myself as a facilitator of powerful conversations. So we'll leave it at that. This is The Well. We're back for 2021, and today we're talking about priorities and productivity. So we were talking just before we went live about productivity and priorities, specifically as it relates to the pandemic and as it relates to being parents in the pandemic, as both Jomar and I have two children, not together, but we each have two children, four total.
Math.
Yeah, two boys, two girls, one of each for each of us. And I've got lots to say about this topic. So I'd be happy to dive in, or would you like to, as we say, vamp first, my friend?
Please, you go.
Okay, cool. So I was thinking about this as we decided that this was going to be our topic today. And sometimes I think that it's helpful when we're trying to identify what something is, or when we want more of a specific thing in our life. Sometimes, not always, sometimes it's helpful to distinguish what that thing is not. So when I was thinking about productivity specifically, I think that, that we have to be responsible for this distinction between productivity is not results. Productivity is not being busy. Productivity, oh no, go away, unknown caller. Pardon me, that was an unknown caller, which was probably, this is the Canadian Securities. You have been fraud. You are a victim of fraud. Please give us your credit card information.
Sounds like your inner critic.
Yeah, that was my inner critic calling. All right, but no, so back to productivity. So sometimes it's helpful to identify what productivity is not. So productivity is not necessarily action. Productivity is not necessarily results. And productivity is the thing that leads to results. But there's a very key factor when it comes to prioritization and productivity, and that is that you have to know where you're going. So in order to be able to prioritize, in order to be productive, you have to know where you're going, because productivity is not busy. And I think that a lot of people buy into this misconception that being busy means that they're being productive. But unless you know where you're going, where you want to go, what you're working toward, you could be spinning your wheels and spending a lot of time feeling productive, but not actually, moving the gauge in the direction that you want it to go. So and then I'll just vamp a little bit on what I think priorities are, and then you can certainly let me know what you think of what I said, and then please vamp as well. So the thing with priorities, I love this. I learned recently that priorities was not pluralized, was not, the word itself was not pluralized until the 1900s. The word priority was invented in the 1400s. And I think that that is such a powerful realization, observation, thing to think about. Because when you think about it, priorities, pluralization is actually like an oxymoron. Like, you can't have priorities, right? So as it pertains to knowing where you're going, knowing what you want to accomplish, knowing what you want to achieve, you have to know that first if you want to be productive in alignment with that, and if you want to be able to prioritize in alignment with that. Because if you're aligned with where you're going and you know where you're going, then there will only be one thing to do at a time. And that's having a priority. And yes, in this day and age, you may have multiple priorities, but in any given moment, with any one given specific focus, there is only going to be one priority, and that's going to take a great deal of discernment. And most importantly, that will be determined on knowing where you're going, knowing what you want to achieve, knowing what you want to accomplish, knowing what the job is you gonna get done.
I love that. I couldn't agree more. As it relates to knowing where you're going, there's a couple questions that come up around that in terms of knowing where you're going. And this is the work that I tend to do with my clients, is getting drastically and dramatically and desperately clear about their vision, and being specific about their vision and tying that into deadlines. So there's this sort of vision making and specifying process that needs to be prioritized first, and everything will feed into that. And once you're drastically clear on that, everything else becomes sort of just a waterfall from there. And I think that question is, there's two questions. One is, what are you up to? And who are you being as you're up to this? And then the second question is, what do you want to create, and by when? And those are my two sort of favorite questions that, when you start to play with that, when you start to really wrestle with it, when you start to work with it with someone, whether it's your partner, whether it's a colleague you trust, a friend, whether it's a coach, when you start to spend some time working in that and slowing down, and you would be surprised how the priorities from how you feed into that just easily come into play. And then, sort of the byproduct of that is productivity, because you're now clear on where it is that you're going. As it relates to prioritizing, so once you've sort of settled these two questions, and whatever it is, you got to have deliverables. You got to write it down. And you and I went through what our phrases are this year. And then from there, from the phrases, I went through like, okay, what do I want to achieve? Once you've really settled into this, then you ask, you get into this process of weekly prioritizations. One question that I like to ask myself and my clients about prioritization is like, if there were only 5 things that you could do and that you could finish this week, 5 things, and that after this week you were able to complete them, you would be satisfied, what would they be? And so that question, I love that question as it relates to prioritization, because then your mind is now sort of warped into this new way of operating where, we're used to, as you said, busy, productive, go, 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 let's do all of the things. But if there were only 5 things, now you get to really think about, what is the main thing? What is important? Stephen Covey likes to say, the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing.
I love that.
And yeah, I love it too. It's my favorite. And so I think beginning with that question really allows you to sit, and we can't stress enough the slowing down into all of that. If you slow down, you will speed up. You will speed up because you're now just doing one at a time. And when I've done this for me as a parent, um, I think the results, if we're talking about results, and I love what you said, Em. It's not, productivity is not results. Prioritization is not results. They're byproducts of doing this work. But I think for me, what the results have been is being more present as a parent, being able to end the day and say, look, I did the things that it needed to happen. And all of these things I've determined ahead of time does not need to be done today. And in reality, like whatever timeline I've given myself is what's causing that stress. But because I did the productivity, the vision building, the goal building, and then the prioritization from there, because I did that work ahead of time, I can come to the end of my day and say, good, I'm good. I can close this out. I can close out my phone. I can be present for my kids. I can be present and connect with my wife. And that's been sort of the results for me. And I had a really great year last year. There were some personal challenges with COVID, obviously, like we all did. But overall, it was a great year.
I love that. I'm going to touch on something that you said, giving people a way to think about it is, focus on the main thing, the main thing, the main thing, because the main thing is the main thing that's going to get done the main thing. So I will introduce this thought process when I do work around values. And I introduce this thought process when, like you said, you're focusing on, say, 5 things. So the thought process is, what's the one thing that it's like an upside down pyramid. What's the one thing, or no, it's not. It's a right side up pyramid. What's the one thing that if you focused on that, everything else would be taken care of? What's the one value? So sometimes when I do work with values with individuals and with teams, sometimes people will have a lot of values that essentially can mean very similar things to them, right? Mm-hmm. So, for example, like I value honesty, trust, transparency, right? Are 3 like things that are really important to me. And so if essentially I value at the top of my pyramid integrity means to me transparency, trust, and honesty, right? So what's the one thing, and so that's an example for values. You can do this with action items too, right? It's like, what's the one thing that if I focused on that, everything else would be handled? What's the one value that encompasses all the other values that I have? Not all the other, but all of the ones that have like a common thread. What's the action item that if you focused on that action item, numerous other things, would as a byproduct be taken care of? So you can think about that too, like really getting to the meta view on what it is that you're trying to create, accomplish, distinguish, whatever that may be.
Yep, I love it. I think we'll wrap it there. My encouragement to folks watching, hi Brandy, watching this now, and hi Ed Morton. Ed, is if it would help you, go back and write down those questions that we asked. And the caveat, and I guess the thing to know is that these are not by nature easy questions to answer. Mm-hmm. They require you to slow down and really think about, your answers to those questions. Mm-hmm. But the result of that, I can guarantee if you give yourself that time to truly answer those questions and rewind back, answer them, slow down, around vision building, goal building, and then prioritization, and then the questions that you just, Emily, asked you now. If you take your time to answer those, you'll have so much more clarity in the way you want to go about per day. There'll be work to do, so it won't be easy, but there would be sort of this effortlessness zone of kind of showing up to the task in the moment by moment. And then you'll find that you'll be more present. By the end of the day, you can sort of walk away from work and feel really relaxed in it. At least that's been the results for me. So do that work for yourself and get those results.
It's like the guiding force. The guiding force. Molly sends her juju and her love to everybody. Blessings to you all. Thanks for being here. We'll be back next week.
See you next week.
Hit us up if you have any questions.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye.